Hello everyone, this is Jacob, also known as Big Yellow Praxis. I am here with another episode about underrated music. This is a podcast called Underrated/Overhated, where I talk to people usually about underrated music. This episode's a little bit different, but I'll get to that in a sec. I basically send a playlist to people and we talk about music. This week I am joined by Alex and Michael from the YouTube channel Elections Generally. So you guys, it's basically an irreverent... It's not super irreverent. It's a bit of irreverent, bit of joking, but also it's like serious, actual political history stuff. Welcome to the podcast.
Thanks very much. Thanks for having us on.
So this episode, as I kind of hinted at before, it's not really underrated stuff. It's about a kind of unique, interesting British musician, I guess. So he's
underground.
Yeah, underground a bit. So he's called Laurence Fox. He's best known actually as an actor. I'm going to be honest, I've not knowingly seen him in anything.
You haven't seen him performing? It's Prince Charles with the true love story of him and Camilla.
So what is this in? I'm aware that he's been in royal stuff. What was this?
I can't remember. Whatever Love Means. And I happened to watch it the other day on London Live, which is one of the channels, which is sort of, they tried to set up a few years ago a bunch of local TV stations.
Yes.
That wouldn't be run by the BBC, sort of private local TV stations. And London Live just has whatever films that they can afford for about 20 pence that they'll put on at basically all times of the day. And it's dire. It's Laurence Fox as Prince Charles and your woman from The Thick of It, who plays one of the assistants, as Camilla. But the whole point of it was to sort of soften the British public on Camilla by showing her side, and it doesn't really work.
Okay.
Not The Crown 10 years before The Crown was made. It's just...
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, so I gather this is... How long ago was this? It was quite a while ago.
This is... Well, watching it, I thought this must have been made almost contemporaneously with it because it looked pretty stodgy. But no, it was made in 2005-ish, or like 2003 or something. So, which actually, I suppose, was quite a while ago now.
Yeah.
Showing my age.
Yeah.
Nearly 20 years.
Yeah. So I was going to say, I can't really make any comment particularly about his acting because I know nothing of it particularly. But he's increasingly known as a political figure, I guess. And an erstwhile London mayoral candidate who I read that he ran entirely on the basis of fighting against extreme political correctness. Now, I feel like that's enough to give you an idea of what kind of person Laurence Fox is. So before we dive straight into the music, which it's all kind of a piece with that kind of fight against extreme political correctness, I just want to make a very minor note that Wikipedia, which is of course the ultimate source of all truth, it's actually quite generous with like labels like musician, as they apply to any celebrity who tries to sing. So Wikipedia calls Corey Feldman, who you might remember is a kind of 80s child actor who has written and performed a bit of awful music. It's quite happy calling Corey Feldman a musician. But Laurence Fox's Wikipedia page nowhere says anything about him being a musician.
That's right. Nowhere.
It does. If you read through it, it says he has a bit of a musical career, but it doesn't call him a musician. Now, I'm not going to use that as some kind of, it's not gospel, but in a way it is. It is. Let's be honest about how Wikipedia functions first. So I'm going to take that as a kind of baseline standard. He's not really a real musician. I'm kind of blowing my figurative load here by getting that out of the way so soon. But basically, he has 2 albums already, and I think just in the last couple of years, 5 singles, and he's done plenty of like live TV appearances. So first, I'll throw it to you generally. Where do you want to start? Do you want to say your general thoughts on it, or should we just dive straight into the juicy playlist?
I think we shouldn't keep the audience in suspense. Let's dive into the playlist.
They want to hear our takes.
So the first one was the behind the scenes video for the music, behind the scenes YouTube video of the video for a song by Laurence Fox called The Distance.
The most technical element of what we're doing today is to find a way to project images onto Laurence's face. We've got a projector being fed by a load of graphics. What am I not?
So when I met Lawrence, obviously he's got a very gravelly tone.
What?
I quite enjoy
I sound like
a bit
Pavarotti.
of beefy gravel to a voice. What's nice is we both have gravelly, smoky voices.
Yeah, but your smoky voice is actually really good, and my smoky voice is like some cat being strangled. But weirdly, the combination of the two, I think, is magical.
It is magical. I think it's magical.
She is the absolute best, by the way, the total best ever.
I put it in here. I thought this was quite interesting and quite funny at points. I put it in here for some specific reasons, but I'm quite curious what you guys thought of this.
So my first thought was really a question, which was who's paying for this? You know, is he paying for it out of his own pocket, out of his earnings as an actor, or has he actually got a label to pay to put this on, thinking, oh, there'll be a market, you know, people who'll be buying it as a protest song or whatever? Because I think that completely changes how one watches it. Because if you're thinking, oh, he's paying for this himself, it does take on a sort of less sympathetic David Brentish kind of vibe, you know, where he's assembled these musicians to go around him, and he's, you know, tried to come up with a clever idea for how a music video might be filmed around his personality. I don't know, and that's why I also went to Wikipedia to see if I could find anything about his music career. And as you say, there's very little on there. You know, there was no like record company listed or whatever. So that was my real thought.
That's actually a really interesting question. Yeah, it's not one that I have an answer to, unfortunately, because there's not really much info out there. I get it gives the impression of a kind of vanity project, because he's from like a long family of rich people, effectively, isn't he? He from the Fox family. I think there's quite a few actors in there, and I think his great grandfather was a kind of industrial magnate of the kind of late 19th century. He's one of those figures. So this
is why I think it gives an interesting, when you know about his family, it gives an interesting insight possibly as to why he decided to become this self-appointed countercultural woke figure. Because I think being an actor is a really tough gig. It's a really hard job to get into, and most actors who had Laurence Fox's career could, I think, be pretty satisfied and happy with the career they had, because he was clearly making a living from it. He's pretty well known. He's carrying a TV show. But if you're an actor from a dynasty of actors, then I think the career that Laurence Fox has had is probably slightly less than what you'd hope for, what you'd expect, because you're not comparing yourself to, you know, the people you knew at drama school who are now having to become other jobs or whatever to sustain themselves. You're comparing yourself to your uncle and your cousin and your aunt, and all people going off and winning Oscars and BAFTAs. So you're just getting more bitter with your ITV3 vehicle,
Yeah. And your ex-partner Billy Piper, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I found that very interesting. I don't know anything about Billy Piper other than the fact that she was married to Laurence Fox and Chris Evans, which makes me feel like the only thing I know about Billy Piper is her terrible taste in men, because both of these people are incredibly annoying to me. But this isn't about Billy Piper. This is about Laurence Fox. So I think there's a really interesting point that I didn't really think about this, but I did watch another video while researching this podcast where he's talking to Peter Whittle, who's a kind of, I think he was in UKIP kind of ex.
Right, okay.
I think he was in the House of Lords. And he's on something called, it's a YouTube channel called the New Culture Forum channel. And it's they're talking about woke culture and its celebrity hypocrites. And it's quite funny because he's being interviewed by this, quite frankly, pseudo-intellectual politician himself and journalist Peter Whittle, as though he's being treated like an intellectual, like who has these very interesting and sophisticated things to say, and they're kind of lounging on these chairs and talking nonsense about woke culture. But he does at some points acknowledge that kind of difficulty of acting, and there seems to be a bit of resentment and annoyance. He says at one point, like, "Oh, I totally get that, I'm from like a public school background, and that's he's like, I get that people would mock that." But he got really annoyed. And this seems to be the thing that triggered him, that he started reading scripts, or I don't quite know how the acting world works, but people, directors saying that we will favor scripts that are more towards marginalized, like women and non-white people, and that's what annoyed him. And he was like, no, acting is a skill, and I've gone to RADA and I've learned this skill, and it has nothing to do with black or white and all this kind of stuff. And that seems to be the thing. I don't know. He seems to be saying this is the thing that's really annoying.
That's what radicalized him.
Yeah. It seems
that was his gateway.
Gateway. That's interesting, because I've always really just suspected that it's purely mercenary. He wasn't happy with the profile he had, just as being a fairly successful jobbing actor, and he wanted to get his name in the papers and be more well known than his ex-wife or whatever. I mean, I've never met him, I don't know, but it just seems so cynical, because it is possible now to make a career and money by just sort of telling a certain section of the country things that they want to hear, which is what Alex and I are trying to do in elections generally, but we've yet to crack the nuts.
To find the section.
Get to find the section of the country.
Applications on a postcard.
That's right. But I think it did seem pretty cynical to me, especially his appearance on Question Time.
Oh yeah. I do too. Yeah, so I think it's that kind of central issue. We're kind of getting away from the juicy musical hilarity.
Well, to bring it back to the music,
but I was going to say,
this shows is that even if he managed to bring this attention to himself by cynically promoting a sort of culture war narrative around himself, when the product that he's trying to flog, in this case these singles, are very samey and hookless and a bit dull and a bit dirge-like. None of these videos have had tremendous views, and I don't think any of these have gone to the top even of right-wing horrible culture warrior single charts. I'm not sure if that's
that chart. That chart, it definitely exists. Yeah. I think in America they call it the country charts.
Hey,
good joke. Sorry, I tread on it.
It's fine.
I did a Google, and I find that his I think it's the album that this song is on was number 12,163 in the Amazon bestseller list, which I think might mean it's bottom of all songs.
Sorry.
But I don't know for sure. Wow, I don't know how many songs there are.
Yeah. Sorry, what number was that again? How many thousands?
12,163. I mean, at some point they must stop calling them bestsellers on the Amazon lists.
Yeah.
Anyway,
okay, that's actually very interesting. That stat.
To be fair, that's only people who are buying music on Amazon, and who does that?
Yeah, crazy people. I have no idea. I have no idea whatsoever. I was going to say that this behind the scenes video is interesting because he is so on the nose when he's talking about what his lyrics are, and he's just like, this is a song about people, I think he said, being stifled from saying what they want to say, which is hilarious because he is not being stifled. He's just getting mocked and criticized for talking nonsense. I mean, he's kind of we've already touched on it a bit, but he is just, would I even call him politically right-wing? I don't even know what his economic policies or whatever preferred are, but he's part of that kind of right-wing culture war, which seems to stand for nothing in particular beyond anti-woke, in kind of scare quotes. And that's the bit he doesn't like, I guess. But the bit that for me that was particularly cringy beyond the pseudo-intellectualism was just the kind of lovey vibes between him and the female singer. I don't know what her name is. And it's just, my question is, and it kind of ties into that, who's paying for this? To what degree is she actually interested in? And we'll get into this a bit. We'll quickly move on to the Jeremy Vine clip, which is possibly the funniest. The musicians that work with him, she's acting like, oh yeah, you're great and I love you and we get along and blah blah blah. But I physically, and maybe it's just me, I cringed at that kind of lovey bit where he's talking with her on screen in this clip. Do you remember that bit?
Yeah, and he's talking about how much better her singing voice is than his, which is at least shows that he does have one correct opinion. But yeah, I suppose that's the problem whenever you've possibly paid to have a band around you. I wonder if he would then pay them to have creative differences with him, pay him for one of the guitarists to storm off stage at a big show right before they were just about to make it, just so he could have the full rock and roll experience,
Yeah. You could pay for someone to like crash a Bentley into a swimming pool or something.
That's right. That's right.
I will gladly take that role.
As a protest.
As a protest. But yeah, so for me, that kind of cringing at paying, it's a sympathy cringe, I guess, for the people that are performing with him. It comes to its peak in the Jeremy Vine clip where he's playing one of his songs.
Can I ask a question before we move on to the Jeremy Vine?
Oh yeah, of course.
Clip? The video with the actual song is the Jeremy Vine one. That's the only one I've seen anywhere. Where is the video that the behind the scenes video is behind the scenes of?
Yes, yeah.
Because I can't see it anywhere. I had to look for Laurence Fox. It doesn't come up in any searches.
Yeah.
It's got this weird, the newspaper projection thing that they talk about in the behind the scenes video, but it's not anywhere.
Yeah, no,
that's weird.
I didn't look super far for it because, again, how far does one look for this crap music? But I looked a bit, and you're right. It's kind of confusing that it's not really there. I don't know whether they abandoned it or whether it's just been buried. It must be somewhere. Surely it's somewhere on his YouTube channel.
He must have been silenced.
He's been
by the damn wokerati.
Maybe he has a point. Anyway.
It's a good question, and I don't know whether that just means that he is being silenced by the wokerati, which is not a term I've heard before, but I love it. Or whether people
I don't know if that's a term.
Or whether people are just correctly judging it to be crap and he just hid it in shame. But so the Jeremy Vine clip is brilliant.
They put something in the water, they seek a cure for the conversation, they stole a march on your indecision. And the first to fall was laughter, just to quell the unoffended. They seek to murder your opinion. And the light has been turned out on the age of reason, replaced by blinding fires that burn wild across the region. For the wrong to rule, the good must just stand idly by. So I need you more than ever. I need your hand in this resistance. If we're going to go,
it's brilliant. So there's so many things to love about this verse, this song. But as I said before, like for me, the main thing I felt throughout it is that embarrassment for the other musicians. It's maybe because I'm a bit of a musician myself, and I have played live with a paid gig where I'm being paid to play for someone whose music I think is terrible, who can't sing or whatever. And that feeling of, that you're perceived as endorsing it on some level, and you have to endorse it on some level as a musician. You have to like get into it to enough of I'm luckily a bass player, so I can get away with just standing there stoically to some extent. But do you know what I mean? You are in some way endorsing it by going out there, and it's quite difficult. So I don't know. I felt really sorry for these musicians, to be honest, particularly the female vocalist. Again, I can't remember her name, who can clearly sing. But it felt quite painful to me watching them all on stage. Anyway, what did you guys think of this beautiful track?
I mean, it's a real dirge, isn't it? Like,
the thing is, you wouldn't know. I mean, you would know because the lyrics are very on the nose. But say you were to just listen to the instrumental version of this track, if he is so angry and furious that he's willing to completely do an about face of his previous career and his previous life and his previous social circle because he's burned with the injustice, you wouldn't know it from this track because it's not
It's not an angry song.
It's not an angry song. Yeah, it's a boring song. It's I suppose it's long. So no one can say he's not being given a platform whenever he's been given that much time on a early morning program. I don't know how many verses there are.
Far too many.
Far too many. Yeah.
It's actually impossible to know because they just run into each other.
They do. It's very hard to distinguish one bit from another, and I think like harmonically, I don't know what kind of chord progression there is. I wouldn't even call it chord progression. It feels, again, it's dirge-like, which is actually, a dirge isn't inherently bad music. It's almost nasal to a dirge, but this it's just monotonous and dreary. And this is kind of, it's a good point that you bring up about like the music, just song to song is that similar sound all the way through. It's not really angry, and this is kind of where for me he feels most kind of, whether he's an opportunistic about this whole kind of stance that he's making culturally or politically, I don't know, but it feels opportunistic in terms of production and sound that he's going for. He feels like he knows that people like kind of laid back, chilled indie, which is kind of vaguely what it sounds like, folk indie or something. I don't know what you'd call it.
Tesco indie?
Tesco indie, yeah. What do people call it? Landfill indie? It's got that vibe a little bit.
Yeah. Or Landfill Mumford and Sons.
Yeah, in fact, that is exactly what it is. It has very... I'm neither a particular fan nor am I against Mumford and Sons, but it sounds like a very bad version of Mumford and Sons. And
he forgot to go, hey, every couple of verses just to wake the audience up.
Yeah, it's true.
I'm really coming for the Mr. Mumford and his sons.
There is a brilliant moment, though. It's a very small moment where he's singing and there's probably a slight gap, and he just kind of... and it's really quite audible, actually, and it just... I don't know, it just fits really well.
That's RADA training. In RADA, in second year, they tell you to move away from the microphone when you're going to clear your throat and then come back. You don't get that in the lesser drama schools.
Yeah, no, it's true. It's just funny because it just fits so well with his kind of smoker's voice that he's just kind of...
I bet he's never touched a cigarette in his life. I bet.
Do you think? Yeah, do you think it's entirely
it's all an act? It's all an act.
I mean, this could just be like Sacha Baron Cohen-esque character acting, right? Couldn't it?
Well, perhaps if the winds change and there no longer seems to be a market, as I think actually there seems like there isn't much of a market for what he's doing, then perhaps this time next year he will drop it all and be like, it was a social experiment,
Mm-hmm.
To say, or he'll have a redemption story.
The social,
he'll have a redemption story. He'll seek to say, I have a redemption story.
Yeah.
It's a very important distinction. Sorry, I've left my phone not on silent mode.
That's fine. We all do it. I think the social experiment line would be an interesting one. It would be very 2010. I feel like it's not the done thing anymore. We don't idiots online don't pretend that that's what they're doing anymore, which is kind of a shame. This video of him performing on Jeremy Vine is glorious. Not just for the opening vocals are incredibly bad. That's kind of the worst part of the song. And it does manage to genuinely get a little bit better after the terrible opening vocals. But I think it's one of those few YouTube videos where the comments are actually genuinely brilliant. So we've got, is there no beginning to this man's talent? He suffered for his art and now it's our turn. This is the Prince Andrew interview of songs, which I think is quite accurate. The male menopause is a hell of a thing. Thank you, Max Fosh, for shining a light on this true masterpiece. Don't quite get that one. I mean, some of them are a bit... I bought a Leonard Cohen album on Wish and I got this.
That's the best one.
Possibly the best one.
That's the best one.
And I'm just going to have to recite a few of the lyrics here because I think they're brilliant, and I think they really kind of exemplify his failed attempt at being an intellectual, and kind of, if he doesn't see himself as a Cohen, he definitely sees himself as something of a Dylan. He's completely wrong, obviously, but
a cousin of Cohen.
Yeah, exactly. They have put something in the water. They seek a cure for the conversation. They stole a march on your indecision, and the first to fall is laughter. Just to quell the long offended, they seek to murder your opinion. Now, I think that last line in particular is just
to murder your opinion. I think that's good, because the thing about Bob Dylan, why everyone loves Bob Dylan's songs so much, is that his lyrics are so literal and can really only be read one way. And he's so clear about what he's singing about. And if you were to ask Bob Dylan to explain his lyrics, he would really make sure that you understood them. And that's what people want from their singer-songwriters.
That's true. That is exactly true. There's a beautiful parallel here between possibly the greatest lyricist of the 20th century and Laurence Fox. I totally agree. The parallels are actually unbelievable. Alex, now, did you think there was anything about this song that was worthy in any way? This is what I kind of want to get to the bottom of, because I'm all about underrated usually, but is there something?
Well, that's the thing. Is there anything underrated here? I don't know. I mean, maybe. So is he a conspiracy theorist? Is he in with those guys? Is he actually warning us about something in the water? I don't know.
That's a good question.
Maybe they're right. Have we considered that? No, I don't think there's much to like here, is there?
Some of the instruments he's playing look pretty nice.
Yes, that's true.
I think that's a real Martin he's playing, and the other fella's playing a Gibson. Those are nice guitars.
There we go. We're finding positive things even in the worst track.
Yeah. I suppose I'm just trying to work out again. I suppose what his strategy is here, and I think this is probably something that we haven't really gotten to the bottom of. Is it a vanity project? Is it like someone, I like to do oil paintings? Is it a hobby? Is it an extra feather in his cap to be booked on shows like the Jeremy Vine show? Owen Jones doesn't get up at the end and do a set.
Be good if he did, though.
I would.
If you're listening,
it would
Owen,
be good if he did.
I'd watch it.
Yeah, I would.
It'd be. He's handy, I suppose, for a show like Jeremy Vine, because that's a live show and it's got a lot of time to fill. So they just say, "Okay, Lawrence, we've got 15 minutes. Can you just warble on?"
He's like, great. I'll get 3/4 of the way through my song.
Yes, that's right.
I just want to contest something there. Warble, I know it's used condescendingly for like folk singers, but warble actually has, for me, because I like folk music, I think Joni Mitchell warbles a bit, doesn't she? And
You know what? I was using my language ill-consideredly, and unlike Laurence Fox, I will say you're right. There are good warblers out there.
Okay.
Warbling is not necessarily a bad thing.
Phew. I'm glad we cleared that up. So is this an offshoot of his political ambitions? And to what extent are those ambitions even real? I sometimes think, and it sounds ridiculous, that they are both sincere and completely insincere, as in they genuinely believe all these stupid things, but it's almost like lying for Jesus, and the actual sincerity at the end of the day of any individual statement isn't the thing that matters. That they're happy to lie and talk crap and just give nonsensical spiel because he feels it's justified in the stuff. Am I completely off base here? This is quite often my feeling.
Well, I suppose he is an actor, or he was an actor, and the one thing that I suppose one way you can describe an actor's job is to make yourself feel certain things for money.
Yep.
And that's kind of what he's doing now, arguably. So I think you're right. Whether it was a cynical thing, it could start as a cynical thing or not start as a cynical thing. Not for him specifically, but for anyone who's trying to pursue that thing, that type of job or gap in the market. I suppose it reinforces itself. So eventually the line between what you're saying because you're trying to get a reaction, or because you think that's not what's expected of you to say, or you're saying that because if you stop saying things like that, you're going to stop being invited on to a program to say those sorts of things. And what your actual opinion is sort of does become blurry. So you kind of become a hostage of your own horribleness, your own previous statements, which I think is a weird sort of Twilight Zone-y punishment
It is,
to inflict upon yourself. But,
yeah.
you know,
Yeah, it's crazy.
Alex can tell you all about it. He can't.
What do you mean?
Look at that face.
The only thing I'm a hostage of is you.
Okay. This is
Calm down.
I can see
This is a forum.
elections generally is falling apart at the seams. It's like Paul and John in 1969. So let's move on to this final track in this playlist, which was a song called Trainers.
Awake, my mind's rushing on, and I'm like Angelina. I love Madrid, I get lost in the streets, I wear trainers. And I'm screaming inside because it's not fair and ironic, because I dance better when my feet.
The first thing is that I'm glad that it has a distinctive name, Trainers, because otherwise I think I find it hard to really remember much difference between this song and the other song. If it wasn't, I was like, oh yeah, this one's about shoes. There was one.
It did have a video though, where he kicks off his shoes, shows us his feet. I hear there's a market on the internet for that. Maybe he's tapping into that as well.
Yes, yeah. This guy's all over the place. It's brilliant.
I saw somebody saying in the comments that I am Dutch and this video taught me what trainers mean in British English. I was like, that's nice.
That's actually genuinely, that's great. I love it.
That's nice.
So this song I thought was interesting because there are some actually positive comments on this one in the YouTube comments. And I genuinely, so my main thought on this is that this is the closest thing to a potential song that I've heard from him. And obviously that's very faint praise. But there are points where I'm like, you know what, this could be turned into something. And I don't want to knock him too much for the completely banal lyrics, because there can be a skill in writing banal lyrics. He completely lacks that skill, but I do feel lyrically and musically there's something in here where I'm like, and again, it's probably in the context of everything else being so crap, where I'm like, he's almost there. He could one day, if he went down this line a bit more, get there. Do you guys agree with that, or am I just being too nice?
I think if the last song was sort of channeling the Mumford & Sons thing, I think in this one he's trying to channel Ed Sheeran almost, with the sort of, with that the simple and seemingly innocent image of just trainers and, you know, focusing on that thing. It reminded me of something you might like Jumpers for Goalposts, and that sort of lyrical space. It lacked any hooks.
Oh yeah,
You know, nothing. I'm trying to think of a pun here about lacing and your shoelaces and a hook, but I can't. Maybe Alex can think of something and we can cut this out and I'll make it look like we were really quick and on the ball. Never mind.
It's tricky. It's tricky. No was the answer.
There are no puns there. There are no puns to be had.
But yeah, no, I find it. I did not find it memorable.
No. I mean, in spite of
I couldn't hum it.
Yeah, in spite of the massive praise I heaped on it before, I in no way recall how the song actually goes. I think I maybe just found it less offensive, and I thought there's something here that could be. It's almost like, maybe you're right, maybe he is. I mean, I'm not a fan of Ed Sheeran, but you know, there's a songwriting skill that he clearly has that isn't
Ed Sheeran, you mean, not Laurence Fox?
Yeah, sorry, I'm not the biggest fan of... I mean, I am the biggest fan of Laurence Fox. No, I'm not the biggest fan of Ed Sheeran, but there's clearly a songwriting skill there that, you know, someone like Laurence Fox probably would be well served to try to emulate. And if he is consciously emulating that, then, heck, it seems to... Again, I probably shouldn't try to damn it with such faint praise. But yeah, I thought... It was closer to being interesting than the others. The lyrics are still magnificently banal.
So I take it we're confident that he is writing his own lyrics. He's not.
That's a good question.
We believe that.
I would. He's not paying someone to write these lyrics for him.
I would imagine he's probably writing his own lyrics.
Mm-hmm. I think so as well. Either that or it's a very good ghostwriting job, because 100% believable.
Yes, yeah. Usually I would say, when I start wrapping up like an underrated episode, I'm like, do you have any desire to further explore the artists we've talked about, or that kind of thing?
No.
I didn't even ask it, but I'm glad you preempted it. It's very wise to do that. I genuinely find him quite an interesting character, though. I can't help it. And again, it's not interesting because he is an interesting person, but this kind of character, again, I'm using the word character as though it is obviously an act. This kind of human being, there's always going to be that question about, like, I don't know. Sometimes sorry, I'm rambling a bit, but sometimes people are just incredibly stupid. And sometimes when someone says a lot of incredibly stupid things, it's easy to think that they are just being disingenuous. Do you know what I'm getting at here?
Yes.
And
Sure.
he's clearly very well educated. He's from a wealthy family. They're all publicly educated. But to me, and maybe this is a bit of a summing up of my attitudes towards him, he is possibly the epitome of well-educated but incredibly stupid.
We say he was well educated. He was expelled before his A levels at Harrow
For being too smart.
for being too smart. They were like, this
Whoa.
is too galaxy brain. We need to cancel him. We
What
have
I
this
think is-
ego from the Wokarati.
Is almost more interesting than the character or the personality or the psychology of him personally is what the way he was able to get so much attention and be able to come on the Jeremy Vine show, play his single, which didn't chart or do particularly well, get so much attention on social media for running to be the mayor of London, and then get, I can't remember precisely what it was, but it was I don't think he got his deposit back. So there was ultimately, I think, there wasn't really a market for this sort of stuff he was coming out with, either musically or politically. And yet, prior to the election, he was given a very outsized degree of attention and media attention. Very articulate. Attention and media attention. And I think that's interesting. And whether that is because he is part of a sort of a social class which is finds getting on television and having their opinions heard and so on a lot more accessible than other people would. And if so, if what you're saying at the start is that the reason he was radicalized was because he didn't like the efforts that program makers and commissioners and directors were making to try and make their stuff more representative of the audience in the United Kingdom, then I think the ultimate irony for him is that he has hugely proven the need to try and make sure that the media and the spotlights are more accessible to more different people, because he's managed to take it without seemingly having much of an audience there for his stuff. And it does sort of make you question how much of a meritocracy the media is.
So I love it. I love that deep dive. That's so much more eloquent and to the point than anything I would have thought. But I don't question at all the meritocracy of like mainstream media, because I never thought it was a meritocracy.
Yeah, that's true.
I hate to be cynical, but
yeah.
And that's not to say there aren't brilliant. I mean, obviously they're brilliant. Whether we're talking, the musical industry or acting, there are clearly incredibly talented people. It'd be ridiculous to try to deny that. But
like Alex.
Thank you very much. Good to be recognised.
But yeah, I mean, yeah, not being. I mean, I don't know how you guys were educated, but I wasn't public school educated whatsoever. We've all been around people who were, and even when they are very bright and very intelligent, that's not even point in a way. Like it comes, that kind of education quite often comes with a sort of confidence that Laurence Fox clearly has. Like it's just like, yeah, sure. I'm entitled, and he's not unentitled to speak his mind, but it's just, it's like, I'm speaking my mind, and obviously I'm completely confident about it, and whether he's internally confident or not, he's very comfortable expressing it and acting as though it's insightful and deep and the most brilliant thing ever said, and that anyone who criticizes me is actually just trying to stifle me, not just mock me because I'm talking shit. And I think he does. That's why, to me, it's that feeling that, yeah, maybe he got expelled. That feeling of, this is the epitome of well-educated but not very bright. Does that make sense? I think I'm articulating myself properly.
Yeah.
Sure.
Sure.
I mean, he's certainly not shy about speaking his mind in a recording studio he may have hired himself, or on the Jeremy Vine show or whatever.
That's a good way to sum up and end on the mysterious thing that Laurence Fox is. He seems to be a bit of a sex icon amongst many people from what I've seen on YouTube comments, which
really,
I guess baffles me. But I gather that there's a specific role that he's been in on some show that people think he's quite hot in. So that's
Prince
fair
Charles.
Prince, obviously, why am I even asking?
We already talked about this.
We talked about this at the start. But yeah, he's a mystery to me in many ways, but at the same time, I don't think he's a mysterious person. I think it's just his role in culture is weird and confusing to me. Anyway, do you guys want to tell both of my listeners about your YouTube channel?
Okay, sure. So we're Michael and Alex. I'm Michael, as we said earlier, but we make videos about sort of British political history on a channel called Elections Generally. We've had a little hiatus since our last video because we've been squirreling away trying to make a video on the history of Scottish nationalism. And then The Economist uploaded a video a few months ago, which hit it beat for beat, exactly what we were going to do, and much better made, and it had 1 million views. And we're like, well, crud. So we went back to the drawing board, and now we're trying to do sort of we're still doing a video on Scottish nationalism, but we're trying to put it in the context of nationalism more generally, why nationalism is appealing to people, why it's more appealing now than it seems to have been in recent history, putting it in that context, which I think it'll be worth watching and should be coming to your screens anytime, hopefully sometime before the UK breaks up, and then because then I'll have to rewrite the whole thing again. But yeah. We're right now, we've had some production issues with Alex. Alex is currently, he's been pinged by the COVID app, so he is stuck at home.
I don't want to sound like I'm cross about lockdown, though.
He's not cross about lockdown.
I'm not cross about lockdown. I think the rules are sensible and maybe even should be kept. For a little longer.
Well, yes, yeah. Oh God, don't get us started on.
Don't get us started.
All right.
Anyway, thanks for joining us, and for anyone who's listening, thanks for listening. And if you want to check out my YouTube channel, I don't know where people listen to or watch my stuff, but if you're listening to my stuff on Spotify or whatever, check out my YouTube channel, which is Big Yellow Praxis, where I've started doing video essays now. So I am now introduced to the beautiful world that is video editing and how it takes seemingly 6 or 7 hours to edit a 20-minute video, which is obviously an absolute joy. But for anyone listening, thanks for listening.
Yeah, 6 or 7 hours. Yeah, geez. Try months.
Anyway, thanks guys for joining me. And
no, thanks for having us.
See you.
Yes, thanks. It's really fun.